I'm going to take these 2x4 cutoffs and a little bit of 1/2-inch plywood and hopefully turn them into tree stumps for Sherwood forest. I mark off 1 inch from this side and then 1 inch from that side at the top, creating a diagonal line, and I'm going to cut that off on the bandsaw. And as I cut this line, I'm not actually going to cut it very straight. It's going to be a little bit wiggly, and that's going to start the formation of the shape of the tree trunk. I'm making the stump slightly ovalish rather than round, and I think it's going to be about 16 across and 14 the other direction. And what I'm going to do now is we've got really strong straight lines everywhere that we have one of these boards. So I'm going to be cutting out on the bandsaw, kind of by freehand, some scoops that is going to make it resemble more like bark once I add the fabric around this. I've laid all the boards out nice and flat on their backs. This is the bottom of the stump, that's why they are fatter. And I'm dividing this into thirds roughly. And I'm going to draw some areas in which I'm going to be scooping out. So I'm going to scoop here, and I'm going to do this every other board, this little scoop. And this is going to just be cut out on the bandsaw, just lightly, although this looks pretty dramatic. And the idea is when I attach the fabric to this, hopefully it'll kind of give the illusion of the interlocking, the interweaving of how bark would look on a tree. So I'm going to be doing this freehand, whoops, didn't mean to do that one, freehand on the bandsaw. So I'll have to raise up the guard fairly high so that I can get this to go through the way I want. The next step is to ease over all these harsh edges with my oscillating sander here. I'm not going to go into anything fancy, any details. I just want to smooth it out a little bit so that the fabric does not catch and tear when I staple it all together. I've placed all the boards on a 1/2-inch piece of plywood, and I've made an oval, but I didn't place the boards like an exact oval. I want it to be fairly irregular. So my next task is to cut out this board so that it's going to match the shape. Now I've marked where every one of these boards is going to go, and then I'm going to number them, and then eventually I will screw them in from below to create the bottom. Once that is done, I can turn it upside down and have a matching top. So now I'm just going to drill a pilot hole right in the center from above. It'll make it a lot easier to find. That was quick. So I have these numbered as 1s and 2s, depending on what they were. I did not pre-drill this, so I don't know how this is going to work. I'd say that works just fine. Good. So I'm just wanting these to line up with the edge. I can probably sand that down very quickly on my oscillating sander to make them line up perfectly once they are all screwed in. I have an old piece of 3/4 inch plywood that used to be a shelf. It's been sitting out in my garage. It has a little bit of mildew on it, so this is a perfect project to use this on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just simply trace the outline of those and cut that out on the bandsaw and then attach that. I'm going to need a hand hold on the top of the stump so that the stagehands can remove it easily. It's not really going to show to the audience. I'm going to put it right in the center so it almost looks like a rotten stump, like a dark spot. So I'm going to start by making a pilot hole. And then I'm going to use a jigsaw to just cut out a shape for the hand. Now I'll clean that up with my oscillator sander, and I will also round over the bottom so that it's more comfortable for their hands. This last sanding move was potentially a little bit dangerous. You have to make sure that if you're going to be using an oscillating sander in the middle of a hole, that when you turn it on, it absolutely is not touching, and that you have both hands on the board, because that sander is very, very powerful, and it can actually start your board spinning and be like an airplane propeller. And of course, doing this little relief here, I had both hands firmly on it. You'd be surprised how easy it is for that to get away. But as it is, I have a nice handhold that's very comfortable, and once this top is painted, you won't really even see it. It'll just look like a black hole. So now all I have to do is put on the top. So I have these pre-drilled, but I'm going to go ahead and drill a little bit into each one of these supports because there's only about 1 inch of material at the top, so it'd be very easy for it to split. So I'll get some of these going. And I'm going to kind of work my way across side to side to make sure that I can get this to fit all right. And I'll have to kind of maneuver them into place a little bit. Perfect. And I'll just do this all the way around. So now the edges of the plywood are sanded flush to where all of the boards meet, and that should allow for a more natural looking edge with the fabric when I'm stapling it around.
Thanks for watching, and please give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed this episode. Next up, I'll be adding fabric to the frame of the stump. Please subscribe.